There's a lot of debate around church clothing, what to wear at church, what not to wear at church. Now, we're not given, like I said in the Bible, we're not told how to dress at church. We're given principles, modest apparel and things like that. But does that mean church, you ought to be formally dressed? Somebody might criticize me and say, well, why are you dressed so casually? Do you not care about the things of God? Well, I actually have other reasons for why I dress the way I do. And my reasons are basically, I don't believe church ought to be a formal event. Like when I see church in the Bible, it's like a family gathering. I can't imagine Jesus walking around in a three-piece suit. I can't imagine him walking around in this really fancy, expensive clothing. Because remember when Judas betrayed him and he came to the garden, remember he had to kiss Jesus to identify who he was. Why didn't he just say, well, he's the guy in the long hair and the expensive clothes? Because most churches that you go to, that's what it's like, right? You see everybody and it's like, well, who's the bishop? Oh, it's the guy in the suit, it's clean cut and everyone else is wearing casual clothes, but the bishop is wearing a three-piece suit. Well, when somebody comes to this church, they probably don't know who the bishop is. And I like that, because that's how I think it ought to be in the Bible, where I just look like everybody else. And I think, depending on the culture and things like that, so I'm not saying it's wrong necessarily to dress up, but this is why I dress the way I do. It's to make a point that I don't think church should be this formal business attire get-together. I think it should be more like a family get-together. I mean, church is not meant to be like a wedding where it's a formal occasion. I believe church is just meant to be like a family get-together. So I do believe, wear your best for God. But the funny thing is that some people's casual clothes are more expensive than my suits. You know how much I paid for my suits? I paid $0 because they were given to me, right? So how do you determine your best? When somebody says wear your best for church, what is your best? Is your best the flashiest thing you've got? Is your best the most expensive thing you've got? Is your best like what everyone expects you to wear? Is your best what you are convicted to wear? Is that your best for God? So, I personally think it should be the last one. I think it should be what you believe is your conviction to what you're going to do for God. That should be what you put on. But if you're going to determine it by what's more expensive, it's funny that some fundamental churches will look at the liberal church and go, oh, look at those liberal church. They don't dress their best for God. But their shoes and their outfits, their jumpers and shirts probably cost more than the suits that they're putting on, because they're putting on suits from the thrift store, or the people going to the liberal charismatic church down the road are putting on the Adidas and all the Nike clothing that was like $100 a jumper. That's more than I've spent on any suit. So how do you determine the best? People will say, well, when you come to church, you ought to dress in a way that you would meet the king. Say if you went to go meet the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of Australia, you wouldn't just go in shirt and shorts. You would go in a suit. But the people that believe this, they don't even do this consistently, because does that mean before you pray, before you go to bed, you ought to suit up and then pray because you're about to meet God? You know what I mean? So, you should dress in a way that you should always dress. It doesn't mean that there is a specific type of clothing you need to wear in order to come to the house of God. They'll say, there's a certain dress for worship and then casual, but, our life ought to be a life of worship. So there's really not anything to stand on there.